Welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad everyone could join us. My name is Mark Stoddard. I run sales and marketing here at ClientSuccess. Excited to be joined today by Maranda Dziekonski from Swiftly. Hey, Maranda, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you so much for having me today.
You got it. Super excited for it. Glad you could join us. Hope everybody's staying warm. I woke up to 6 inches of snow in my backyard this morning, and my kids are outside building a snowman as we're having this webinar. So excited.
I'm in California, probably about 30 miles outside of San Francisco, and it was 35 degrees here this morning.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm ready for it to warm up.
Right, crazy times. Looks like in the chat pane, we've got people from Calgary, Edmonton, Panama City, Florida, Toronto, Philly, all over the place.
Wow, look at
80
them popping
degrees
in
in
there.
Texas today. Laura, that's kind of rude. I'm not too happy with you.
Laura. Wow, look at everybody
Cool.
popping in there. Yeah.
Everybody's in there. Well, good. I'm guessing everyone can hear us okay. Maybe just kind of give us a quick thumbs up. Make sure you can hear us. Sounds like what we're seeing.
Costa Rica.
Yep.
We have someone from Costa Rica on. That's amazing.
Costa Rica, Copenhagen. Yeah, all over the place. It's good. Really good. Well, good. I also don't want to forget, we also have Dave Blake, CEO of ClientSuccess. He's on. He's going to help us out toward the beginning. Dave, I assume you can hear us okay?
Yeah. How's everybody doing? I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. So really good. Well, cool. Well, just a couple housekeeping items. I got Dave on the call to share a few things right here at the beginning, and then he'll turn it back to Miranda and myself. We'll run the majority of the discussion. For the actual topic, you can see here on the slide, we're going to dig into something that's especially relevant in today's climate on how to balance customer empathy and business needs during turbulent times. I don't think I need to tell anyone that we're feeling it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways our businesses and a lot of ways our lives have kind of been turned upside down in the last couple of weeks. And so I think this is a particularly relevant topic for us to spend some time on and dig into. We're going to run this as if you were on the Tuesday webinar with Star from eCompliance, that was much more of kind of like a fireside chat. We're going to do the same thing today. So we're also going to try something slightly different than what we did before. I'll fill you in on that a little bit later. But for now, maybe I'll just let Dave share a few things. Dave, you there? You want to take over?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thrilled to be here and so thrilled to have you all join us. Thank you for joining us for wherever you are, whether it be in Europe, South America, here in the US, wherever. We really appreciate you carving out time to be with us. And as Mark said, we hope that these series will feel intimate, and you'll be able to be, it'll be collaborative and engaging and informative. The first thing we want to share is just to be safe. As Mark said, there's a lot going on right now. We just hope and pray for each of you and your families and your colleagues that you'll be safe, you'll take care of yourself and be well. Second thing I want to share is that these times there's some employees and friends and colleagues who have been impacted. And so I think as a community, we can unite together to help our colleagues in this space. So if you happen to be a company that's hiring in this space, whether it be a leader, whether it be customer success managers or whatever, we really encourage you to share that online. I have a post on LinkedIn that a lot of people have posted on there. But let's look after each other and let's help our friends in the customer success community any way you can, especially if you're hiring at this time.
Definitely.
Third thing that I'll say is that if you like this content, please spread the word with your friends. This will be every Tuesday and Thursday, and we're excited about that. So please spread the word there. And then finally is let us know how we can help. We want to be a resource for you, and we're so grateful to be a part of this community, and we want to be a resource. We'd love to help out. If you reach out to us and if you want to engage with ClientSuccess, here I'm wearing our new shirt today. As we engage, we're going to send out some of these shirts. This is my plea to stop calling things negative churn. Instead, it's positive growth. So this is our new shirt this week, and we'll share some of these and send some of these out to our audience.
Get that hashtag positive growth going.
Dave,
positive growth.
every time I say negative churn, which I'm so guilty, I think of you. I'm not kidding. I
Thank
know
you.
that you've said it, that you hate the phrase negative churn, and then it comes out of my mouth so much, and I'm like, oh, Dave would not like that.
Right.
I don't. I hate that term. So this is a shout out to us changing the term to positive growth.
Looks like
And
Kristen
with
loves
that,
the shirt. She wants one. And Caitlin is
Hey.
actually saying they're hiring a client onboarding associate. So yeah, send that over
Hey.
to us. That's great. Best to post
Go
that
for it.
information. Send that to us, Caitlin. You just hit, I'm at mark.stoddard at ClientSuccess, or you can just post it on LinkedIn to Dave's post. If you go find him on LinkedIn, just post it there.
And
And we're also
I
going
have
to think about putting together a website on it, but
I
that's
was
a
going to say,
little bit down the road.
I'm actually creating a Slack channel just for this type of
Sweet.
stuff as well.
Cool.
I'm going to
Yeah, we'll send that out
to LinkedIn soon, but just it's through the client or customer success leadership network. We're going to create it. I've already created it. I just don't have it out public, but it's folks that are looking and then folks that are hiring, because I personally know a lot of people that are being impacted by this. So.
Gotcha.
That's
Well,
great.
yeah,
We can help a lot of people. And the last thing I'd say is just I know we're going through challenging times. I don't want to minimize that, but I think that we can also, as a customer success community, lead with a sense of optimism, as a sense of service. We can come through this as stronger companies, as stronger professionals, and a stronger community. So I just want to share my optimism. There's a lot of scary stuff, and maybe I hope that none of you or your relatives are impacted directly and have the virus. But if you are, our thoughts and prayers go out to you. And for the rest of us, let's continue to bind. Let's fight this. Let's not give in, but to have optimism and push our way through it.
For sure.
We're thrilled to be here. I wanted to welcome Maranda. Maranda is one of the best thought leaders out there. She's also a good friend, just has a big heart, gives back to this community so much. And we couldn't be more excited to hear from Maranda today. So with that, just want to give a shout out to everybody, and I'll turn it back to Mark and Maranda.
Cool.
Thanks,
very good. Appreciate it, Dave. So and echo everything that Dave just said. So make sure that if there's anything that we at Client Success can do to help, feel free to reach out, let us know. And maybe just before we jump into the main topic, for those of you who maybe are not customers, or for this is one of the first times you're hearing about Client Success, I'd love to just give you a little bit of an intro, a little bit brief overview of Client Success, who we are, what we do, for those that just don't know. So just so you know, we're a customer success growth platform, and really our mission is to help customer success teams not only keep, but also to grow their customers. So that positive growth, that's our game. That's where we're trying to get to. And really the way we do that and we enable that is we start by helping CSMs to accomplish everything that they need to do to drive customer success along the entire customer journey, whether that's from onboarding to adoption to renewal, and then obviously on to growth. And at the same time, while we're enabling CSMs, we're given really informed insights and the ability for the rest of the team to collaborate around customer health, to collaborate around revenue retention, to collaborate around growth forecasts. And so if you want to learn more, my team would love to chat with you. You can research us at clientsuccess.com. Also just give us a shout on Twitter. We're at Client Success. Happy to chat with anybody that wants to learn a little bit more. You can see here on the slide, we work with many of the top names in SaaS, have a really solid track record of helping them keep and grow their customers. So that's Client Success, and we'll switch to today's topic. And so really excited again for Maranda to join us. We know everybody is super busy right now with everything that's going on, and really appreciate you taking the time. And one other thing before we jump into it, I mentioned earlier we're going to do something new today. So if you were on the Tuesday webinar with Star, what you remember is that you were posting in a bunch of questions in the chat pane, and I was kind of reading those, and then we'd have a discussion around those. And that was really good. I really liked that. And after the call, I learned that Zoom has another feature where I can just unmute participants if you want to ask a question directly. And since this is going to be really interactive, back and forth Q&A, here's what we'll do is if you have a question for Miranda and you want me to read it off, just pop it into the chat pane. We've got already probably 100 people in the chat pane, which is really good. What I hope you do though, and if you can, is if you want to ask your question directly, just go on the bottom of the Zoom thread, there should be a raise hand button. If you can't find that, go into the chat pane and just type hand raise, and I'll see what I can do to unmute you so you can ask your question. Hopefully that'll help us have even more interaction. So we'll plan on doing both of those things to make it a good conversation back and forth, and make sure that everybody walks out of this happy with something they got from it. So let's switch to today. So Miranda,
Yes.
you've got a really unique role that I think gives you an interesting view into today's topic, right? You're probably the only person I know of that's a VP of customer success and people ops. I don't know if that's a typical career path for somebody.
So over the years, of course, as you go through your career, you won't believe how much you touch that is part of people ops, right? And I've been part of startups now for 9 going on 10 years. And in startups, you do everything.
Sure.
I was the COO of another company where I own people ops and finance, and all of those components kind of fell under me. So yeah, it's not normal, but it's actually something that over the years I've become really well versed about, just kind of like the regulations and the laws and everything that we have to do. But I've also partnered closely with a lot of people who really focus on the human side of things, right?
Sure.
So I've always been very more operational. So this was definitely an interesting role for me to take on. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So do you think that like, how does that dual role impact kind of today's environment? How does that change the way you might view some of these conversations? What do you think impact that has?
Yeah. Well, I think first, I just want to call it out. It is a challenging time.
Sure.
And I really appreciate what Dave said, that, I believe wholeheartedly that we're going to get through this, and there's a silver lining somewhere. We still may be looking for that silver lining depending on where we work, what we do, what's going on in our family, with our family situation. But I believe that there's a silver lining somewhere. Not to date myself, but I feel like I've been through different versions of this, not this exact thing, but different versions of this, right? Y2K, we thought, 1999, we thought that
Sky's falling.
11:59 and 59 seconds, everybody collectively inhaled, waiting for computers in the world just to kind of shut down, and it didn't. I've been through 9/11, and then I actually worked in the automotive industry during the 2008 downturn, and I worked for a company that filed Chapter 11. So it was really tough. I watched a lot of my friends and my colleagues lose their jobs. I watched my family, I'm from Michigan, it's very blue collar. My families all work in factories or in the service industry. Factories shut down left and right that were there to support the automotive industry. So I've seen versions of this. And the one thing that I think, me having this dual role, I constantly keep in mind is it's not just about business, it's about people too.
Sure.
And it's important that we're supporting our customers, but we're also supporting our team members and being empathetic towards their needs, and also taking that empathy to the customers, because without the customers, without the team, we have no business, right? But we also have to run a business. And that's, I think, where this conversation comes in is how do we ask for renewals? How do we have conversations with our customers about where are you? Are you going to be there? What do you need from us, right? It's just a very weird and can be a very awkward conversation to have if you haven't built rapport, and sometimes even if you have. So,
so how do you think, so I would suspect that a lot of people are getting a bunch of requests over the last week that they might have gotten in a normal time, but just a lot more of those. People calling and saying, hey, can I delay payment? Hey, I'm not going to renew. Hey, can I extend payment terms? Whereas I used to pay, annually, can I switch to quarterly or monthly? Like, do you kind of have a thought process, or like how are you and your team perhaps thinking it through that? Or maybe how have you thought through that in past times like this? Like, how do you try to approach those conversations?
Yeah, so I work in government technology right now, but I've also worked in companies who did have, monthly revenue. Like I have annual 3-year and 5-year contracts at this time, but nothing's guaranteed, of course. But
Sure.
I also have had, I've worked in companies like HelloSign where you have $9.99 monthly subscriptions up to customers who pay thousands upon thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Let's just first acknowledge one thing. None of us really have an answer on how to do this 100%. We're all like trying to figure it out.
There's kind of like no playbook right here. I keep hearing that on every time I turn on the news. Like, there's not a playbook to handle this. We're all figuring out as we go.
It's true. And it's true, I think, for all of us, right? So what I'm going to share on how I have been approaching these things may or may not work for your business. So I think the first thing to do is, one, assess your customers, assess your business. There are going to be companies that they're going to do really well during this time, right? Because they're an essential tool. Are you an essential tool? Are you a tool that drives healthcare, that drives public safety, that drives whatever, insert the customer base, right?
Sure.
So if you're an essential tool, your conversations are going to be incredibly different. Your business is going to be very different than those who aren't. If you're not an essential tool, first thing I would do, and first thing I have done, is just go through and segment out the customers and take a look at who you think is going to be at risk, who probably isn't, and who's safe. And then come up with your strategy. Approach it human first, though, right? So what I asked my team to do, it's probably been 2 weeks ago now, is just check in on your customers. Don't ask about how is your business, just ask how they are, right?
Okay.
I think that's important because, we're humans first. So making sure you're checking in just to see how people are doing. And then we have to go contract by contract and figure out how we're going to handle it. I have had a customer that just recently reached out about delaying payment. While it's not ideal, and everybody needs the revenue, I think every company has to kind of look and see what they can do. See what you can do, what you can offer, what you can't offer, and figure it out. Because, of course you want to be a guardian of your business and make sure your business is going to be there. So it's this balance of being people first and, customer centric, but also keeping the lights on. And it's a tough balance.
You mentioned a minute ago, like going through, and I think it makes a lot of sense to go through and just kind of look at, segment your customer base and kind of decide on health. Now, a lot of us are used to determining health by things like product usage. If they're not using my app, like they're at risk. Does that make as much sense? Like, how do you determine health now? Are you looking at the industry first? Are you looking at the health of our relationship first? Like, where would usage stack up in this? Because I suspect there's a bunch of people that might be seeing high usage or normal usage or just a dip, but like, their company, they're in the travel industry, and so they saw a huge dip or something. Kind of a hypothetical, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, usage, once again, I hate to say this, but it depends on your product, right?
Yeah.
So I have customers, so I have different personas within my customers that I expect a certain amount of usage out of them. I do have a persona that I would like to see daily usage and some that are monthly, depending on what they're doing, right? So if you are someone who's closing the books for accounting, you may not be in QuickBooks every day, right? You may go in at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, whatever it may be. But if you're someone that's doing like the billing, you're probably in there every day, right? So it's trying to figure out, one, yes, what is the usage you would expect during normal operating, and has that gone down? And if yes, why has it gone down? Are they letting team members go? Are they totally shifting the way they're doing business? And then thinking about the overall customer, getting to your question, the customer health, I definitely would put the industry in there. Take a look at the industry and see if it is an industry that's at risk. And this could be a binary, yes, it's an industry that's at risk. That's a ding on the health, right? So that's
Sure.
someone you should focus on even more. If
Yep.
they're an industry that's not at risk, then they get a little bit of a beef up on their overall score, right? As
Yeah,
part of
right.
that equation. But definitely, I would still keep usage in there. Look at industry, look at their contract cycle. So figure out, is this a 1-year contract, 3-year, 5-year, kind of like I have, or is it monthly? Do you have a contract with them? Right. So if you have folks
So
that
you
have,
are on a monthly rhythm, like dig in on that one, that monthly one. Let's say that's the kind of the most at risk, that monthly one that on a credit card, like technically could be turned off at any time.
that is the most at risk.
Yeah, if you're managing that team, what are some points of advice you have for that team? I get that you're not managing that team today, but if you
Yeah,
were,
let me dig into my archives here because I have that was my customer base at one point in time. My advice to someone who's currently managing an account base that has MRR, it's on monthly subscription rather than annual, is to still do the same activities, figure out the industry that they're in, but also think about how you can add extra value. And this is true for, I think, even if you have an annual. I really think people need to kind of shift how they're thinking about customer relationships at this moment, right? So is there something that your product could do right now that would help with the efforts or help with whatever your customer is trying to solve for, right? So it's always important to plan for the future, right? Especially
Sure.
with your product team, looking at what your product roadmap is, but pause, just have everybody pause for 1 second and take a look at, what is your product solving for now? What was it solving for yesterday that got you that business? And is that good enough still? And if it's not, you need to work with your product teams and figure out what needs to be deployed now to keep your product sticky, make it relevant for today.
And I think some of that is even just the messaging of your current product. Like, for instance, I know from me managing my team, it's not that so it's not that our product can change from yesterday to today, but I'll tell you what, my team has been emphasizing a lot more of the value of having a customer success platform when everybody's remote.
Yeah.
And the value that drives, because it used to be we're in the office, but when everybody's remote, the value of having something that drives consistency, that drives collaboration, that drives all these different things, while important in normal times, is crucially important when I'm not sitting next to my team. And
Exactly.
so, like, we've spent a bunch of time kind of thinking through, like, what are the value propositions, for instance, of client success for a remote team? Because guess what, we're all remote now. And so we've even come up with a unique demo and a unique use case that we're talking to companies about, of how to use client success, or how to emphasize different parts of client success in a remote work culture.
Yeah, definitely hitting on that. And I agree with that, but I also think there's you could look at it from the financial side as well. If folks don't have money right now, what is it you can do as a business? We kind of touched upon it a little bit, where people asking if they can defer payments. Get creative with your contracts. Get creative with, how you think about contracts, and, don't get stuck in, this is how we've done it always, so this is the way we got to do it. Like, really get some brain power behind it. If you have monthly customers and you're starting to see a big fall off or a big churn, is there something you could do for them to keep them?
Sure.
I think if we could just get over this hump where, if things start to go back to a little bit of normal, we would see less of that downturn. So what can we do to get everybody over that hump for the monthly subscriptions?
Let me read through a question. And just a reminder to those of you who joined late, if you want me to read off your question, pop it in the chat pane. If you'd like to ask your question directly, and I'm going to keep pushing on you guys to do that because I think that'd be fun, go ahead and raise your hand in the attendee list, and I will figure out how do I unmute you. But on that thread, Melissa, I was just on the phone with Melissa on my team before we hopped on the call.
You can call me Melissa. I'll answer.
I'm going to read off this question from Aaron on this thread. So he says, one idea that came up on an executive office hours this morning is if you're on annual contracts and a customer requests pausing their account, go ahead and give that to them contingent on an early renewal. So say we're 3 months from renewal, they want to defer payment or even get free access for 3 months, have them sign the renewal today and 3 months early and effectively give them, 15 months for the price of 12. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great idea as long as the customer has funding. Because you could do that and sign that customer up for that extended contract, give them an early renewal. But if they don't have funding, they're not going to be able to pay that. And that's the truth in my world with government, right? Government contracts, right? So they have a limited amount of funding. And I know, at least in my world, I have a line item of what I can spend on my tools, and ClientSuccess is one of my tools, right? So when I worked on my renewal with ClientSuccess, for example, I renewed early with you all because I already had the budget allocated anyway, and that budget didn't go anywhere. So if your customer has that budget allocated and you can get at that and figure out if they do, that's a great way to approach it. But if they don't, and they don't know where that funding is going to come from, that's a little bit more challenging.
So would you be advising everyone on the call, and everyone, I hate speaking in absolutes, but so like there's a school of thought kind of like pulling on that thread a little bit. We should just, some people might interpret that to say, let's just go out and try to get early renewals from everybody. I guess, how do you balance that with the, trying to be empathetic, trying to realize that, like, okay, if this company is reaching out proactively, or I guess let me put it this way, are you using the early renewal option like we talked about here? Is that kind of like a negotiating tactic, or something you do when somebody reaches out? Or would you even recommend people go proactively to say, hey, let's try to lock in early renewals? Is now the time to have that discussion? Maybe
depends on the relationship you have with them, right? If I have a vendor that I never hear from, that the value that they've offered me is really unclear, that I pay the bill because maybe I have one team member that uses it or whatever it may be, and they reach out to me for an early renewal, I'm probably not going to do that as a customer. But if the value is clear to me, then, and I have the budget, I'm not saying for everybody to proactively go out and reach out to their customers and try to do early renewals, because that makes it look like you're panicking.
Sure.
So you have to balance that out, making sure that you don't look like you're panicking and you're just reaching out of desperation to get early renewals. You should do it in a thoughtful and methodical way. And once again, balancing out the human side of this, kind of going back to the customer empathy component, really take a look at how this is impacting your customers, right? Be genuine. Show them you care. Ask them how they are. Ask them how their family is. Just don't go straight in for the early renewal. Understand where they're at and try to meet them there. And then, down the line, and you know what, I had to give my customers some space. Of course, my default was, I was thinking, oh, we need to contact every customer, see how it's going, see where they're at, get a feel for what's going to happen to us, right? Because in times when things are uncertain, we default to things we can control. That was my immediate like gut reaction. And then I had to pull it back a little bit and say, you know what, let's only reach out to ask people how they are because we genuinely care. Do not ask them about business. And then let's just pause and let everybody take a deep breath and exhale. Like, then we can revisit this in a week or two, right? Like, let's just pause and exhale, give people space, let them figure out their new norms. The reality is a lot of people don't work remote. So there was a lot of scrambling over the last week or two, trying to get, Wi-Fi set up and office space set up and making sure everybody had monitors and keyboards. And, we had locked our team out of the office completely, and we thought it was going to be a week. Because we went we went out a week before everybody else in the county I'm in.
Gotcha.
And now everybody's, I need a keyboard, I need a monitor, because it's all in the office, right? So I
Yep.
think just pause and once you exhale and everybody's done the human thing, then think about the business and what's the strategy you can use and what makes sense for your customer base and the segment they're in. There's no one size fits all answer here.
On that same thread, just kind of on that separate thread around just getting equipment. If you guys haven't done this, one of the things that we did internally is we kind of had one day where we allowed people to go into the office and basically check out their desk equipment. So pretty much everybody has gone in that didn't have a monitor at home. And so we checked those out. So IT has a record of all those, but that's actually helped us turn around and be productive within a day versus having to go through those mechanics. And of course, we had to manage everyone coming into the office and making sure that everyone's still social distancing and whatnot. But that was, if you haven't done that, that's something I would recommend, just figuring out a way to check out kind of the equipment that you have, if that's helpful for you at home.
Yeah, you have to be really careful, at least here in our area, in San Francisco area, if you have someone that's been exposed, and then letting people go back into the office. So I would say
that's a good point.
Check out your liability as a company, wherever, what region you're in, and your liability and risk around allowing folks back in the office right now to get anything if anyone on your team has been exposed and has been in the office in the last 14 days.
Gotcha. Good point. Cool. I'm going to read off this other question from David.
Sure.
What he says is, in our small business, we're honoring requests to suspend services for several months with the intention of resuming again later, and just adding the month's loss to the end of the agreement. So also we offer reduced services for a lower price, but then looking for ways to make up the difference in revenue by longer terms or transferring the service to another business unit in the organization. So also interesting ideas, just saying, look, we'll pause it for 3 months, but we're going to tack on 3 months to the end of the contract. I think that's
not a bad idea. It's kind of what the mortgage companies are doing for people, right? If they,
are they?
I think some are, they're either making it all due when you can pay, or they're tacking it onto your mortgage. It's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong.
Gotcha.
I think another thing too, though, that we have to be careful is if you're a small, like Series A startup, and you're doing anything around, I would say seed, Series A, Series B, your MRR is incredibly important. And the minute you start tacking on to an annual contract, making it a 15-month contract or an 18-month contract, that really reduces your MRR, which then could hurt you when you go for funding or you go for any kind of debt financing. So it's just food for thought. Just be thinking about that. Now, of course, it's better to have the customer and have the MRR than to not have the MRR. So you have to balance that out, right?
It'd be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few months. Because I talked to a lot of companies in that boat, and they're balancing MRR with cash flow, right? Because in a lot of those cases where they're a seed fund or a Series A, they might have already been in fundraising mode over the last couple months because they're getting to the time where they need to fundraise. And so it would be interesting to see, and I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but it'd be interesting to see how those dynamics play out with the investment community over the next 3 to 6 months. Will investors give people a pass on MRR because they were managing cash flow, or it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
I don't know too many investors that probably will do that. They'll just want to give you a lower valuation.
Yeah, probably right. Cool. Let's see here. Emmanuel says, wouldn't VCs recognize this? I think it probably just depends on the VC. That's if you're a Series A seed stage company, are used to talking to 50 or 100 VCs, you get 50 or 100 different opinions on that. So I think that probably just is the importance of, at that point, if you're raising funds, to make sure you're talking to a lot of VCs at that point.
Yep, it's a numbers game.
Cool. Sabra, you just wrote in a big question. I'm going to try to read it all. We'll see what we get through. So Sabra says, our product is an alternative to the broadcasted television in hospitals, mostly used in waiting rooms for staff wellness and patient rooms. We feel like it's so important to have our product, especially now that hospitals are even more full. We've done a few things to help our customers. We've created a COVID-19 resources page with mini medication clips.
Meditation.
Meditation or mediation?
I think it's supposed to be meditation, but maybe it's mediation. Yes,
he says meditation.
Meditation.
With mini meditation clips from our main channel and additional resources that we think will help. So how can we cut through the noise and share these resources? We've emailed everyone, both prospects and customers, but is there more that they can do for customers to help anyone in need of access to their resources without sounding salesy or insensitive with everything that's happening in the world? And I think that's the key point there at the end is, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how do we walk the fine line here of, not feeling like we're taking your product or service might have an opportunity in today's environment, but you gotta message it in a way that comes across as, as empathetic, doesn't just come across as taking advantage of the current scenario. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think first we have to realize that all of our customers are being bombarded right now with helpful content, right? Which is great. Everybody.
I'm glad that every restaurant I've visited in the last 10 years, I know their COVID-19. I'm being sarcastic.
No, but it's true.
We've all got that email.
It's true. It's 100% true. I am so appreciative of all the tools that I've used to, in my history or anything I'm using now. All the emails I'm getting, just so I love seeing what people are doing. The reality is I'm really overwhelmed with all of the information that's coming at me.
Sure.
And if I am, the odds are is your customers are too, right? So once again, there's no straightforward answer about this, but really just kind of understand what the customers needed before, what they need now, how you get that in front of them. It's up to them. There's no magic. There's no magic bullet on this one.
Sure.
We're thinking about this stuff at Swiftly as well, right? So we work with public transit agencies. So what we have done is we sent a survey out to public transit agencies just to see what they are doing right now during this time, right? And then we're going to put together an informational and share that.
Sure.
We, of course,
because that's what a lot of it is. A lot of people are just wondering what's everybody else doing here. Right?
Exactly. Well, I think the meditation thing is really awesome. And I love that you all are doing that. I think also piggybacking that on best practices that you're learning from the industry would be helpful. So things that are helping your customers think through, what do I do now? What do I do next? I think that's really key. At least that's how I'm thinking about it, right? So free content is great. Introductions to others in the same space for information sharing is also phenomenal. And then really, shifting your product focus to figure out what you can do right now to help them within the platform or within your product is another great way to go.
Agreed. Cool. So I'm gonna switch gears and we've got a few hand raisers, so I'm gonna go through a few of these hand raisers. So Michelle, looks like you raised your hand. I'm gonna click allow to talk. I'm gonna give you a couple seconds to be ready for it, but I'm gonna click allow to talk for Michelle, and then Michelle dropped her hand. Class, looks like you're the next one that raised your hand. So I'm gonna click allow to talk to Class, and then we'll hear from you. Say, Class, we should be able to hear you now. Are you, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, loud and clear. What's going on, Class? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I work for an e-commerce business, or we actually supply software to e-commerce businesses. And
gotcha. And where are you calling in from?
Yeah, from Estonia, actually.
Wonderful.
No kidding. What time is it in Estonia? 10 o'clock?
Yeah. It's the evening, but I thought it would be definitely worth staying up and what your webinar. I'm not regretting it completely.
My man. Cool. Well, yeah. What's your question?
So my question is, we sell software to e-commerce businesses, so businesses that sell online and do this on multi-channel, and so we know how their businesses are doing. And some businesses we see really struggling, and they come to us asking to stop the payments or to give discounts. And I really like, the introduction and the explanation around empathy and, doing what you can for the businesses, which we try to do as much as possible. But for some businesses, we really think that they actually might not survive this crisis. What would you recommend in a situation like that, where you giving a discount or anything like that would be merely postponing the inevitable?
So
one,
it's a really hard question, Klaas, and I see why you're asking that. Look, it's, you never know. Maybe they could come out of this, right? Maybe they could. So I guess don't throw them in the grave quite yet. But it goes back to what I'd said earlier of doing an internal assessment and figuring out what you can offer and what you can't. And being consistent. You want to make sure, and I don't know how things are in Estonia, but you want to make sure that you are operating from a few playbooks once you have those developed, and being consistent with, you offer one customer this with these circumstances, the next customer with those circumstances, you should offer them that as well. And of course, you're going to have some one-off situations, but every situation shouldn't be a one-off. You want to make this as predictable as possible for your company, so you understand what your revenue is going to look like as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
No,
you got it. Cool. I think the next one I've got is Anthony. So Anthony, if you still got your question, I'm going to click allow to talk for you and let you chime in here. Anthony, can you hear us okay? Let's see. Looks like if you're chatting, Anthony, I can't hear you.
You might be on mute, Anthony.
Might be on mute. Let's see here. All right, I'm having a tough time hearing you. So Anthony, if you still have your question, just pop that in the chat pane and I'll answer that. Next one I'll move on to is Aaron. So.
Oh, Aaron. I know
Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Mr.
You hear
Aaron.
us okay?
I just wanted to drop in and say hi. That was really all I needed to do.
That was all it? Just saying hi from Portland?
Yeah, it's just good to see you guys. It looks like everybody's happy, healthy.
So far.
Socially distant. So Miranda, keep the Instagram posts coming. That always brightens my day. And Mark, pleasure to see you as always, guys. That's it. Just want to say hi.
Hi, Aaron.
Oh, man. Well, cool. Good to talk to you. Cool. Bunch more questions. Let's see. Let's go to Debbie. So Debbie's on the chat. So actually, I'm going to hop over. There's a bunch of questions in the chat and then some questions in the Q&A. I realized I've been reading all the questions in the chat. So I'm going to go over to the Q&A. So Jan says, we're deferring renewal payments of our annual contracts if they ask, but not the term. Would you recommend extending the term as well? Probably kind of address that in a couple of the other ones. Any initial thoughts there?
I think we kind of covered it, right? If you have the ability to extend the terms and have a longer contract, I say why not, if that's possible.
Why not? Yeah.
Yep.
And it looks like the next question from Matt is effectively the same thing around suspension versus extending contracts. It sounds like that's kind of the hot topic of the day, is figuring out how do we have a playbook around whether extensions or renewals or something around
his
there.
Second part of his question is really fascinating for me, though, asking attendees how many are offering suspensions and for how long. I don't know if I, as a business person, would actively offer suspensions. I think I would want customers to come to me, and then I have a playbook about how to handle suspensions. So that's just my first gut reaction. I don't think
unless you have an enormous war chest of cash and you want to offer an enormous, I mean, you'd get an enormous amount of goodwill from it, don't get me wrong. But that comes back to the balancing the business needs at this time. That's an extremely customer empathetic move. It feels like that might be borderline too heavy on the business needs, unless you have the scenario where you could handle that.
Yeah. If you're a very, very large organization and you have a giant bucket of money, then great.
Some of that.
That is not the case for most of us. So we have to keep the revenue coming in to keep the lights on, right?
Yep.
So I wouldn't proactively go out and do that.
Yeah, cool.
And then there was one, or no, there's more. There's more coming in. Do you want to read it, Mark?
There's much more. Yeah, I'll go to this one's from Anonymous. Based on what you've said about assessing your customers and determining if you are an essential tool, is it a good opportunity to sit down with them and send them a survey to give us feedback for our solution? This would help us to understand if we are an essential solution, and learn how customers are struggling with our solution and really pinpointing how we can help them during the crisis. So if you're kind of unsure, I don't know if I'm,
yeah. So I
how would you
don't
approach that?
know. I don't know if I would, I mean, depending on how many customers you have, right? If you have thousands and thousands of customers, I think the quickest and best route to go would be to send a survey. But if you have, hundreds, I would suggest dividing it up with the customer success team and having conversations about what, your customers are deeming essential for their business, for their day-to-day, and how do you fit into that bucket. I think on another note, you can take a look at what your customers do and kind of understand if they are in a business that is essential during these times and make a determination based on what their business does, if they are essential to our community. And if they are, then you can narrow that down. So you start with a bucket of customers that are this big. You then know the ones that are providing essential services, then your bucket gets a little bit smaller. That's who the ones that you would probably want to narrowly focus in on. And I also think we're seeing other things come out of this that are going to be really interesting, new business models, new things that we didn't use before come out of this. So I think it's an opportunity there as well. And what I mean is, while restaurants are struggling and failing everywhere right now, unfortunately, Safeway has a line around the corner for toilet paper, right? What does that mean for your customers? Like, dig in and think about that. Think about the new normal and figure out what that means for your customers, because that could also help you understand what their business looks like over the next couple of months, and if you fall into that essential need for them.
Yeah, as you were mentioning that, I was trying to pull up a tweet that I saw yesterday. I can't find it, but it was a tweet talking about here's the 6, multi-billion-dollar unicorn, now public companies that formed right after the 2008 crash, right?
Yep.
And that's that's something for all of us to be thinking about there. And
Yep.
any curious ideas other than a toilet paper delivery startup that you think about in these times?
I don't want to say that here, then my startup idea would be gone.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Good point. Keep it close. I won't out you today. Cool. We'll take a couple more questions. We'll probably have about 5-ish minutes left. I want to make sure that we kind of keep close on time. If we don't get to your question here, I will still kind of I'll take a screenshot of all the questions, and then we'll try to answer as many as we can in a follow-up question or follow-up, or maybe a blog post or something. But I'll just read a few more. So we've got Bushan writes here, question is more internal focus as opposed to less customer focus, acknowledging that there is going to be some amount of churn and more so during these times. How do you balance things internally within your organization to make sure organization is able to survive this phase? So there's going to be more churn than usual. There's an expectation we're going to see that. Maybe how do you handle those conversations internally? How do you handle that conversation with finance? How do you handle that conversation with, maybe your ops team who maybe needs to adjust targets? Like, what's your advice there?
Yeah, like I know for a fact that sales teams everywhere are slowing down. Sales teams are usually the first that are hit. Marketing is right there with them. So look, on the internal side, I think it's just really important that you keep your team informed about the state of the company. Transparency is key. Balance it to where you're not causing panic, but I come from an organization that's incredibly transparent about runway. So we know, how much time we have and what we have to do to keep the ball rolling. Do everything you can as a leader or as a fellow team member just to kind of free up the mental space so your fellow team members can, shift their focus to things that really matter and things that are important. Of course, first is family and health, but then, of course, being guardians of your customers. So sales probably will slow down, and churn most likely will go up. So have a strong understanding of where that breaking point is for your organization, of when you need to make difficult decisions in regards to team members and staffing and stuff like that. A lot of companies I know right now are pausing on hiring. And I also know quite a few companies who are starting to reallocate resources. So if they do have a big sales team, which a lot of folks do, they're looking at reallocating those resources to drive more activity on current customers, and helping figure out what does that look like and what could we do creatively to make sure our current customer bases are really guarded, and we're, not losing them. I think, lastly, if you do have to make, difficult decisions, which, a company that I'm an advisor of paired, they just had to let a lot of their team go, which is always a difficult decision. And I know we're going to get a lot of this. It's tough. It's terrible. Really think about how you can be supportive of your team if you do have to let people go. What are the resources that are out there that are available for them for training or job placement? Get creative and figure out how you can help them as they make that shift. And lastly, on a happier note, make sure all your team members have a purpose right now. It is so easy when you're remote to lose touch with each other, to sometimes feel like you don't have a purpose in your day-to-day. Make sure that everybody has goals, that everybody knows what they're marching towards. You're having regular check-ins, that you're making sure it's a safe place, and that people are flagging when they're having, morale issues, or you as a leader, if you are a leader of a team, knows what a morale issue looks like, and really hopping on that. We're doing some really fun things at Swiftly, like we're doing talent shows on Zoom. We're doing show and tell, trivia night.
That's cool.
We did
I've seen
Scribble.
happy hours.
Happy hour
cool.
last week was Scribble,
Yeah.
which is like Pictionary. Doing things to try to make sure everybody is just getting that social outlet, but also feeling connected with the team.
And just to a point where you're not talking shop, like the temptation is when you're on Zoom all day, like Zoom is a work tool. So I'm here, we're talking shop.
Yep.
So actually one of my teammates yesterday said, look, we're going to have a lunch tomorrow and we're going to get on Zoom. And if anybody talks about work, I'm going to smack you. Cool. Perfect. Like, let's do it.
I love that. Also,
That's awesome.
I get up every day and put my makeup on and do my hair. I don't know why, but I just
It changes your mindset, man.
It does. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get up. I'm not gonna work in my jammies. I'm gonna put my makeup on. I'm gonna do my hair. I'm gonna feel like I'm going to the office, because I think it also just changes like your mental space, right? If I was sitting here with my hair in a knotty bun, in like a Michigan State hoodie, sitting here like all like blah, sorry, I had to say it, Mark.
Get her done.
Anyway, yes,
cool.
Go green.
Well, go green. Let's pause it there. There's still a few more questions. I'm gonna take note of those, and we'll try to answer these in a follow-up question. But I think that's a really good place for us to stop. Really appreciate everybody's interaction. Really, just hope everybody got some value out of this. And if you'd like us to continue this, like we've set it up on the calendar for us to do it for the next 3 weeks. Originally, the intention was do it while everybody was working from home. We don't know how long we're going to be working from home, but if this is something you'd like us to continue, if you're getting value out of this, please shoot me a note, let me know, because I've got to make a decision next week on do I continue this same rhythm going forward for the foreseeable future. John says, yes, please keep going, my man. So yeah, love to hear from you.
Yeah, and also I just want to let people know, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you had a question, look, I am not the end all be all of knowledge, but I think a strong community and brainstorming together will get through this. So if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, I try really hard to get back to everyone. Just message me, let me know that you were on this webinar, and we can go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe just to wrap things up, if you have any, let's call them customer love stories, and you just want to, whether they're your customers or some other examples you see, you just want to give somebody a shout out, feel free to get on social media and share something at the hashtag customer love. I remember yesterday I shared on Twitter, me and my wife went and picked up lunch from a local sandwich shop, and I'd never seen this, but on the brown paper bag, they wrote a huge thank you note, just, seeing how grateful they were that we, obviously didn't eat there, but we went and picked it up and brought it home.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I thought that was really touching. I thought that was,
It is.
really, a really nice touch for them to do. So I shared that. And if you got any examples like that, whether they're software customers or anything else, I'd love to see it. I'll retweet it. We just need more of those stories out there right now.
I agree. I had that experience yesterday as well. I ate at one of my local restaurants. I didn't eat there. I ordered, and we're on Instagram with each other, this restaurant, and I posted a picture of the heart that they drew and all of that. So it's really important, more now than ever.
For sure. Well, cool. Really appreciate it, Miranda. Any final words for us?
No, I want to tell everybody, keep your heads up. We have been through things before as a community and as a society. I think this is the first time I've ever seen us all globally doing something together, like staying in our homes. I know not all countries are, but many are. And so we're all going through this together. So once again, reach out if you need anything. I'm on LinkedIn. But yeah, keep your heads up. This will pass. Agreed.
Well, cool. Again, really appreciate it. For everybody that's on the webinar, I'll send out the recording. We'll try to send out the follow-up with questions on it. And I know you're all signed up for our next webinar, which will be Tuesday. Jay Nathan from Customer Imperative. I'll send out a little bit more details on what he's going to talk through. But again, thanks to everybody, and we'll let you get back to it.
All right, snaps.
Talk soon. Thanks, everybody. We'll go snaps. I like that.